Hello! So, if you've seen my Cafe Tacuba video, or more likely my Maximum the Hormone video, you already know where I'm going to go with this. A bit more than a year ago, I made a video where I talked about a musician named Miyavi, who's Japanese, who comes to the UK, or has been to the UK like 4 or 5 times in the past decade. That was the case then, I'm not sure if it's still the case now. Anyway, in that video, I complained about 3 other bands that I love from different parts of the globe who just never come to the UK. This is the last one of the 3 to have announced a concert within a year of me making that video, just to prove me wrong. It's like I tempted fate to show how stupid I was, and it delivered. But joke's on them, because now I get to see 3 of my favourite bands from other countries. So tonight is the last of those 3. It's Indochine. This is a French band who I originally talked about way back in 2020 in a video titled 8 French Bands You Need to Hear. And while the concert wasn't within the year, it was announced within the year, and I found out about it literally 3 minutes after it got announced and bought the tickets at the first available opportunity. So tonight we're back in a very similar situation I was in pretty much a year ago when I was seeing Maximum the Hormone. I'm financially strapped. I'm so grateful to my parents for being able to lend some money. And once again, it is absolutely sweltering. Last year for Maximum the Hormone, I think it got to 33 degrees, and that wasn't even the hottest it got that summer. But I'm fully expecting to die from the heat. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stay very hydrated. Once again, I'll talk to you a bit more about the band and how I came to discover them when I get on the train. But one thing I will mention now is that, like the other 2 bands that I've mentioned, so Maximum the Hormone, who sing exclusively in Japanese, and Cafe Tacuba, who sing exclusively in Spanish, Indochine is my favourite band that sings entirely in French. This is less of a problem than those other 2 languages. But one thing I will be doing between now and when I leave is just swatting up on some French videos. Up until about 2 months ago, I had finally gotten into a place where I could watch pretty much any YouTube video that was in French and more or less understand it. But I've slipped a little bit in my practicing of the language for the last couple of months, and so I'm now finding it hard to hear things, particularly lyrics to songs that I've been listening to. And yeah, I'm going to have to swat up on that before I leave. Honestly, it being Sunday, I thought it would be easier to find somewhere to vlog, it's quiet on the train, but with the combination of people being off work and the miraculous weather we're having, this is the best I could find. So apologies for the audio quality, I'm right next to an open door on a train. So, regarding Indochine, I don't know if I've made it clear yet, but I've been trying to learn French for a very, very long time. And part of this is immersion. So what's the thing I'm going to immerse myself in the most? It's going to be music. So I have been listening to French radio stations, French podcasts, and French sort of playlists and whatnot for quite some time. And along the way you pick up a few bands, and this is one of the ones which comes up the most often. It's a band that is huge in France. As a band, they started in the early 80s. I think their first album was about 81, 82, thereabouts. And they've had repeated sort of perennial success from the 80s through to the early 2000s, and most recently with their 2017 album, which was their 13th album, creatively known as Très. This last album, Très, is a massive hit maker for them. There's some huge songs that came off of that, and I'm expecting a lot of those to be played tonight, particularly La Vie est Belle, absolutely gorgeous song. No Celebration, I think that came afterwards. I think that was part of the singles collection, but that was definitely from that time period. On était Français, College Boy, and Station 13. So these are all big hits from sort of the last, within the last decade, effectively. I haven't really explained their sound properly yet. I did kind of explain it in that video I talked about in 2020. They're basically the French equivalent, I would say, to Depeche Mode. Slightly darker in places, slightly a bit edgier, slightly closer to Placebo, but if you're into Depeche Mode and Placebo, that generally kind of synth pop rock kind of sounds that's a little bit macabre, sometimes a little bit dark in places, then yeah, this is a great band to go for. Some of their music videos are pretty damn heavy, particularly College Boy and La Vieille Belle, both from that album. Some of the 80s hits, of course, include L'Aventurier, Trois Nuits par Semaine. You go back to the 80s and very much like Depeche Mode, they were much more in the pop side of things, very synth poppy. And then over the years, they've just generally got heavier. So this is basically going to be right up my street. Like I say, if you're into those bands, then that's definitely one to check out. The last two bands I mentioned in this video, Café Tacuba and Maximum the Hormone, they both showed up out of nowhere in a place called Brixton Electric, or Electric Brixton, one of those two. I always get it the wrong way around, so I'm going to say both. Tonight, Indochine are playing in a bit more of a famous venue. It's the Camden Roundhouse. I've been there a few times, but the fact that it's a Sunday has me a little bit concerned because I want to be able to get back home tonight. I can't afford a hotel exactly. I always thought London was a city that never slept, you know, one of those 24/7 kind of places where there were buses and underground, I guess, metro, whatever you want to call it, throughout the night. That's really not the case. So I've got to get out of the venue pretty quickly again tonight, which is exactly the same position I found myself in a year ago with Maximum Hormone. So yeah, it's going to be fun. But unlike Brixton, which is only one stop away from Victoria, I've got to get across from basically the north of London up in Camden. It's going to be a good day, so we'll see how it goes. So referring back to those issues with transport in London, or rather getting out of London, that I mentioned earlier, I had to do something which I haven't had to do in a very long time, which is leave a gig early. I've just looked, and the only song I missed, it turns out, was You Spin Me Right Round, like a cover of the Dead or Alive famous track. So, not the worst thing to miss, at least I caught basically all of Indochine's heads. So on reflection, I think I was incorrect earlier when I said that they reminded me of sort of Depeche Mode or Placebo. Maybe not incorrect, maybe not fully correct, as in there's so much more range to it. There's a very heavy dose of 80s music in here, particularly a bit of a New Order thing going on, even at times a little bit of a U2 thing going on. Their stage presence kind of reminds me of like those old videos of Oasis back in the day as well, back when the Gallaghers were getting along. And there's even a touch of Muse to their sound. That being said, it's not completely far removed from Depeche Mode and Placebo, so you can see what I mean. The range of sound, the range of kind of musicality, the stage presence is something much more to talk about than just say it's the French equivalent of this. It's got a lot of scope. Speaking of which, Nicholas Serkis, or Serki, I am unsure, the lead singer of the band, is the only original member. He has such a stage presence. I think experience is the word I would use. He's very good. He basically works the crowd like a seasoned professional, and he's got so much experience at this, and he just knows every beat of like how the song is going to work in a live setting, which bits the audience are going to react to, etc. So it kind of reminded me of so many of the other amazing bands I've seen, like for example Green Day, who I've mentioned, do fantastic live shows. Iron Maiden also do fantastic live shows. It's definitely in that kind of realm. Still a little frustrated that I had to leave early. That's not something that I ever usually do, but I made the most of it. Oh, and I managed to scrape together enough to get myself a t-shirt. And yeah, I'll have to really consider gigs on a Sunday, because the last 20 minutes of the show I was completely preoccupied with what time I was getting out, and having to make it to the exit and wait there for like 1.5 songs and anything. I'm just gonna have to go before 2 minutes walk becomes 20. Anyway, that is 3 bands out of 3 that I said never comes to the UK, who've now come to the UK. Actually, I saw a lot of people wearing t-shirts of the Indochine logo, but in the Union flag colours, and it said something about July or June of 2014, so they must have come at that point, and I just didn't know about the band at that time. I think I only discovered them in about 2016. It's easy to forget for many of us that London actually has the 3rd highest or 4th highest, I can't remember which, population of French speakers, of Francophone speakers, out of every city in Europe. And it felt like, once again, like with Café Tacuba, that basically every French-speaking person in London was there in force. In fact, from what I can work out, hearing some people speak and hearing the way that Nicola was talking on stage, I think a lot of people may have actually flown over here specifically for this. And the reason for that is because this was the warm-up show for a new tour that's actually going to be taking place. This t-shirt is unique in its design because they're only going to do the one-off London show and then use that as the kind of warm-up and ground testing, I guess, for the set list for their tour that they're going to take throughout France and Belgium, probably Switzerland. I could more or less tune into people's conversations around me, but at some point it really did become very tiring. Well anyway, with all that said, thanks for joining me for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This is 3 bands out of 3 that I said never come to the UK, now have come to London, now have seen them all. So I can tick those off as, rarities. If you like this kind of thing, I'm hoping to do more vlogs for vacations and concerts in the future. If you look through the rest of my channel, there's so much more content to do with music that I've been doing recently. I'm going to carry that on for a bit, and then I'm going to get back to doing some retro gaming. So yeah, if you're into music and you're into retro gaming and general discussions and waffling and blah 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 blah, hearing me yak on, then feel free to subscribe, like the video if you liked hearing me talk about this. If you want to say anything about the band or tonight's concert or anything else that I might have to talk about, then feel free to leave a comment. And with all that said, have a good one.